everybody. I am doing a video. I know it's been like 4 months since I last posted a video about basically starting my book career. And I wanted to talk a little bit because I get asked this quite a bit when I do presentations about how do you write your stories. And it's always interesting to me because I really started out as an illustrator. So as an illustrator, I was always thinking in terms of the pictures that was already going with text that have been provided to me. But then as I delved into becoming a illustrator, I found that I really developed a love of the writing part of it. Um, as an author illustrator, you have so much more control over the world building because you wrote the text. So with that said, if you're coming from somebody who has primarily been focused on the pictures and you had not been as brave into doing the writing and now you really want to get into the writing, I wanted to share 3 books that I found that were especially helpful to me getting started on my writing journey. The first one, and I've talked about this in the video, is Writing Picture Books by Anne Whitford Paul. She is a well-known children's book author. She's written tons of books. And then this is her this is kind of my main, I guess, thinking in terms of textbooks that if you're thinking about writing for picture books, this is a great one. And what I loved about her book is that she gives you the breakdown of different points of view, how you can take one story and write it in multiple different ways. And so that multiple different ways, because sometimes the first time you write a story, and I'm prefacing this as if you tend to be somebody who wants to do the writing first. That's the way I am. A lot of illustrators are not like that. They will usually work on just thinking in terms of pictures. Nothing wrong with that. It's whatever gets you there. This is in terms of how I start with the words first. I tend to be a words person, and then I go into the pictures. And it's funny, the reason why is probably for me is I've always been provided text, and then I would go into doing my illustrations. And so I'm a little bit more comfortable doing it that way. And then also because of my background in graphic design for many, many years ago, because I worked at a magazine. And I worked in the advertising side of it, just always given the text. It was kind of breaking down into a workflow. I felt comfortable with that. And also for me, what I realized is if my text wasn't like really tight and then I'm doing the book dummy of it, then you have to really be willing to do lots of iterations of the actual artwork, because that's going to influence, of course, if you think in terms of pictures and then you do the words after the fact, that you are willing to jump through a lot of dummy hoops, which I still do anyways with the writing, but I think, and illustrating, but I decided I'd feel more comfortable with this new process of just making sure my writing is really tight and so that I'm not moving lots of scenes back and forth. So this book was very helpful in terms of figuring out like when something's not working as far as how you've written it. Is it the tense? Is it the point of view that you've chosen? How do you really accentuate the emotion and the drama and get that kind of arc in rise and fall in the action? So this book was very helpful with that. And in addition to that, she points out several resources in the back section of the book that you can look into to give you more information about how to write a better story. All right, so that one right there. The next one that I absolutely really love, I just finished this. This is called Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And she wrote this fantastic book about how do really good stories, why do they compel us to keep turning the pages? And you might think, well, oh, I'm just a picture book writer and I don't really want to write longer format books. I still think, because I started getting interested in writing more longer text, I started picking up this book because it was recommended highly from other middle grade YA writers. But even if you don't want to write longer text and you're like, I just want to stick with picture book writing, the great thing about this book is it really talks about your A story and your B story. And I think that is very important when you are writing a good story. A story is about what is the plot of your story, what really happens in your story. You know, one of the examples I think of, I always like tune into animation just because working with kids as an art teacher. So like Monsters Inc., it's a story about a monster that scares little children. That is your A story. Your B story is about what hits in the, kind of inner level emotional aspects of the story. And so that's what really resonates with the readers. We pick up on that. And so the B story for Monsters Inc. would be that monster becomes a father in terms of that kind of emotional, development. So I love that part of it. And I think even if you're writing a picture book, some picture books might not have, if you're writing an ABC book, you might not have a B story, because that is a very, just a simple where, informational could be fun as well, but maybe your story doesn't lend itself. But if you're wanting one that has more emotional play into it, thinking about your A and B story is great. This author gives very specific exercises that you can try to go ahead and workshop your own story. So excellent exercises. I did them. Really helped me think about now whenever I read a book, watch a movie, or, think about, anything. Like I really love Korean dramas. I'm looking for that A and B story. What is the A? What is the B? How are they moving the plot forward? And how are certain, sequencing of events, like if this happens, this definitely leads into this happening. And that even works on a children's picture book level too. So great book, whether you're writing for picture books or longer works. It's like middle grade or YA. Third book that I really, really enjoyed reading was Writing Down the Bones. This was really, when they're talking about the author here, Natalie Goldberg, I forgot the name, Natalie Goldberg. So she's the author. And this has been in print for quite a bit of time. She did a lot of writing workshops, and she kind of compiled things that were helpful for writers to kind of get over the emotional hurdles of really embracing becoming a writer. I struggled with that myself because I really just always was an illustrator, and embracing that aspect of saying, I am a writer and I can do this, and also has some great helpful exercises. Did the exercise, as you can see, I do a lot of bookmarking. Great exercises, great way to talk to yourself so that you can tackle the writing process of writing. I think one of the things that I really decided to do when I just said, I'm going to go ahead and try to write my own stories, is I started really looking at it. And as I progressed through this journey, I started thinking about, well, how do I treat the work of being an illustrator in terms of when I was learning to become better at visual storytelling? And I really was like, I'm going to bear down and treat writing the same way, because I feel like the things that were very, in illustration, the things that we are trying to get better at, not all of it's fun. Some people might say, oh, it should be fun all the time. I don't know, learning some things that are really hard concepts because I struggle with color, or I was struggling with composition, or whatever, doing certain parts of it because I wanted to learn more. And so I would look for resources. I would find books. I would find other people that were more successful at it. And so I started doing that with the writing. And it has helped me improve my ability to write a good story. So I feel like now being able to have the visuals and the story, it makes it a very cohesive package that I can go ahead and then send out to my agent to review, or my critique partners. And I just realized, because of my experience with illustration, that long couple of years or 3 years of going to graduate school, what were the things that helped me be more successful with my illustration work? And so those are the things that I took away and said, how can I apply this to writing so that it's anything you're learning, and writing especially, it's not something that comes naturally to me. And so it's something that I was like, how can I make this go a little bit faster? What are the things that worked with illustration? Will this work with writing? And yes, it did. I was very pleased to find out that, some of those tactics that I used with improving my illustration work also worked with improving my writing. And I'm still learning every day. I think that's one of the things that the big takeaway is, I talk to other people who have graduated from a program, and for me, I always preface this that you never need to go to a fancy art school. You don't need to necessarily, they have so many online resources and online schools that are amazing that um, people I've talked to and interviewed, they're like, oh, I just did this and I just really focused and really, made this my career and passion that I was going to do. And I applaud them. And then it's amazing that they did that with so much discipline. I was not as disciplined. I felt like I needed, but I also was like working a full-time job and as a family, all those other things that come into play. Once I started going to graduate school, it really honed in like my level of focus and drive. It was like the professors I had, they were more, it's like coaches telling you to keep going. This is what you need to work on and yada, yada, yada. I also love the fact that the networking, I still am friends with some of the people that I went to graduate school, and we still keep cheering each other on. We have occasional Zoom meetings. We go ahead and say, hey, what are you doing? How's life treating you? And always giving encouraging vibes to keep going with your artwork on any capacity. It doesn't matter if you have a full-on business or you're working another job or it's just a hobby. So we just keep going and telling each other to keep going. So I think that's really important, that community aspect of it. And so I took those things and like, I need to find a writing community. I need to find people who are really knowledgeable about this, whether they've written a book about it or whether they are people who are willing to just talk to me and share their writing experience and their illustration experience, or also being author and illustrator experience and how they go about that. So yeah, I have in the description box a link to the podcast, and please check it out. Wonderful interviews and just really kind people who shared an extensive amount about their journeys. So yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's going to evolve, and I do these videos because being an art teacher, we're always required to reflect and think about what worked, what didn't. And these videos are really helpful for me because I'm just keep getting older and I forget things. I really do. Like, I even forgot that in middle school, I had wanted to be a writer. Like, I have a younger sister. She saved all the writing that I did and she sent it to me. She mailed it to me. And I was like, oh, I forgot I even thought about doing this when I was in middle school. And I had a really interesting middle school English teacher, Miss Harden, and she was she could have been like the drama teacher. She was just very, when she talked about written works and getting us interested in Shakespeare, because that was the first year I had to read Romeo and Juliet, just really excited and passionate about the written word and storytelling. And so I got started writing things, and you kind of forget. And so it really helps doing these videos and the podcast to really encourage me to say, hey, I started from here and now I've gone all the way over here. And so I think sometimes we forget about that in the creative journey. I think we think that just because I got this or this, it's just constantly evolving. You are learning more. And by any means, if you think, oh, well, I got a degree in this field, I go like, not everybody. There are certain people who are just ready out of the gate. They were just, or even before getting out of, a degree, they were ready to go professionally. But I found that it's just such a few people who are really there. And it's like the next year or two that you are revising, you are flipping things, you are really taking the time. And that's one of the things that I found was prohibitive for me in graduate school, because the time frame, I was on a quarter system. So you're like rotating classes every 9 to 10 weeks. And so with that said, I could never fully develop projects to the level that I wanted to. Now I get to. And then having that freedom of saying, hey, I'm going to work on this book dummy and this story for a year, 2 years. That just wouldn't fly really in, that's something you got to do outside of graduate school or whatever program you're in. Or if you're doing a bachelor's degree and this is something you really want to, become an author, illustrator of your own children's literature, then that's something that I would highly encourage you to do outside of what you do in your regular classwork, because it's just because of those deadlines. You're just never happy. And I mean, I'm still like, I'll do something and I'm like, look at it like, a week later, I'm like, not really happy with it. This could be better. It's always like that. But it's less so now. I'm way more forgiving because I know I didn't have to churn it out in 9 to 10 weeks. I mean, it's just things that you work on And as an art teacher, once again, I tell my students, I'm like, I can tell that you spent only 30 minutes on this versus somebody who spent 2 weeks on a project and then turned it in. And I'm just so much more excited about seeing the work and the development that's come across with it. So never hesitate to think that who you're sending this to, whether it's a literary agent or an editor, isn't going to pick up on the fact that you've done your homework and you've done. And so like, I highly encourage not only reading these books, do the work that they tell you to do, because you'll noticeably, dramatically see a difference in your writing and your storytelling. And so even if you're like, I don't want to do it based on that particular story or whatever example they're giving you, use your own, and then see how that evolves that story and changes it and develops it even further. And as you see with writing, I think it's interesting because I'll keep all those multiple drafts here and there, and you're like, I'm on draft 52. And it's like, you're going like, wow, this is so much better. I see like potential in this and becoming something that could become a physical book. And then on top of it, if somebody acquires it, they're going to add even more improvements and feedback to the story. And so I'm always excited to see like what they suggest and be like, I didn't think of that, and it makes it a better story. So 2 thumbs up with that. So anyways, this video is meant to be an encouragement, and find some resources, find your writing community or your illustration community, because those people really keep cheering you on and you'll cheer them on. I think it's a wonderful symbiotic relationship, and that's why I especially love kids' children's book literature, because everyone is so kind, encouraging, and warm and welcoming, and from whatever background you're from. And so anyways, happy illustrating and happy writing. Bye.